On the night of July 15, 2016, Turkey was thrown into chaos. As darkness fell, tanks rolled onto the streets of Ankara and Istanbul, soldiers blocked bridges and fighter jets roared overhead. A faction within the Turkish armed forces had set out to overthrow the government of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Within hours, the world was watching one of the most dramatic nights in Turkey's modern history. To understand what happened, one must look back at Turkey's past. Since the founding of the republic in 1923, the military had always considered itself the protector of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk's secular vision. It had intervened before, in 1960, 1971, 1980, and 1997, each time claiming to restore order or safeguard the nation's founding ideals. But by the early 2000s, the balance of power had shifted. Erdogan's Justice and Development Party had risen to power, steadily reducing the military's influence while consolidating its own. Amid this struggle emerged another force, the followers of Fethullah Gulen, a cleric living in exile in the United States. Once Erdogan's allies, they became his fiercest rivals. The government accused them of infiltrating the army, police, and courts. By 2016, Erdogan and his supporters believed Gulen's network was plotting against him. That July evening, the plotters struck. In Istanbul, the Bosphorus Bridge was sealed by tanks. In Ankara, helicopters fired on government buildings and even bombed parliament. The state broadcaster TRT was stormed, and under duress, a news anchor read a statement declaring martial law. The coup leaders called themselves the Peace at Home Council, invoking Ataturk's famous words, "Peace at home, peace in the world." But the attempt began to unravel almost as soon as it started. Erdogan, targeted in his holiday retreat, escaped before the rebels could reach him. Then, using nothing more than a FaceTime call broadcast live on television, he urged the people to rise up and defend democracy. And they did. Thousands poured into the streets, unarmed civilians confronting tanks facing down gunfire, and overwhelming soldiers who expected little resistance. By dawn, the coup had collapsed. More than 250 civilians and loyalist security personnel lay dead, and over 2,000 were injured. Yet the president had survived, and the people who answered his call had turned the tide. In the aftermath, Turkey was transformed. The government launched sweeping purges. Soldiers, judges, teachers, and civil servants were arrested or dismissed in the tens of thousands. Media outlets were shut down. A state of emergency was declared, lasting 2 years. Erdogan claimed the country had defended democracy, but critics argued he had used the crisis to tighten his grip on power. Abroad, allies condemned the coup, but worried about the breadth of Erdogan's reprisals. Relations with the West grew strained, especially when the United States refused to extradite Fethullah Gulen. Meanwhile, Turkey moved closer to Russia and other powers, reshaping its foreign policy. For Erdogan's supporters, July 15th became a day of national pride, celebrated each year as Democracy and National Unity Day. For his opponents, it marked the beginning of a darker chapter, one of deepened authoritarianism and silenced dissent. The night of July 15th was more than a failed coup. It was a turning point, a moment when ordinary citizens stood against tanks, when the balance of power shifted forever, and when Turkey entered a new era, one still unfolding today.